heals quickly. Nick is a native of Michigan. He grew up in southwestern Michigan on a farm that's basically corn, soybean, wheat, and produced on hay, so he has a farming background. He received his BS degree in the Department of Crop and Soil Sciences at Michigan State University, and he joined Dr. Rudy's program in January of 2016, so that's a pretty quick turnaround. I think you caught a course or two from Michigan State that applied towards your degree, but some of our students ought to see that quick pattern of finishing quickly and maybe take heed of that. But Nick has been accepted into the program at Iowa State University to work on his PhD, and we're going to start that in January. Yep. Okay. So, a little more than that, I received his title Evaluation of Chemical Gametocide in Sorghum and Field Conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Burson. So today we talked on the master's project where we were looking at the use of a chemical gametocide in sorghum under field conditions and also evaluating the amino acid profile within the anthers and glumes. So for a little background on sorghum. Sorghum is a self-pollinated crop, and it is grown as either a hybrid or a pure-line cultivar depending on the economics of the region in which it is grown. For example, in the U.S., it's grown predominantly as a hybrid, whereas in places such as Latin America and Africa, it's typically grown as a pure-line cultivar. Cross-pollination is critical for breeding purposes, for production of breeding crosses, and for the production of hybrid seed. The methods we have for producing those crosses are hand emasculation, which is not very easy to do, and there's a little bit of consistency issue, typically depending on the person doing emasculation. You get a very few seed because it is very difficult to get large quantity of emasculation. It is applicable though in the breeding program for the production of breeding crosses. And then there's hot water emasculation, which is still not too easy. There's some logistic issues. There's also a consistency issue because you have to maintain a certain temperature. If the water is too cold, it can risk not killing the male gamete. If it's too warm, you risk killing the female gamete. And because of that, the seed amount is quite variable. You can either not get much hybrid seed or you can get quite a bit. So that is useful, or can be useful, for the production of fairly large quantities of hybrid seed for testing if it's done properly. And then there's plastic bag emasculation, which is what we use in Dr. Rooney's program. Very easy to do. It does have some consistency issues. Again, typically based on the person conducting them. And the seed amount is limited. You can get 1 to 100 hybrid seeds, and it is very applicable for production of breeding crosses. There's also genetic male sterility, which we use predominantly for population enhancement. It's easy, it is consistent, we get large quantities of seed. However, it does have its limitations, such as difficulty in take several generations of backcropping to eliminate the sterility from the lines produced, and also there are limited genetic backgrounds that possess the sterility, so we can experience some genetic bottlenecks. And then cytoplasmal male sterility is what's used for the production of commercial hybrid seed. It is easy to use, it is consistent, and it is you do get large quantities of seed. We can not really use it for breeding purposes because you again have the fertility issue. You have fertility restoration genes you would have to work out, plus the sterile cytoplasm, but also limit your ability to maintain seed stock. So, a new, relatively new method, at least in sorghum, is the use of chemical male gametocides. They've been looking at using chemical male gametocides in many economic crops such as wheat, corn, rice, cotton, since the 1930s. But there's quite a few issues with them. Typically, they tend to produce phytotoxic effects such as reduction of female gamete, incomplete male fertility, and other damage to plants such as stunting, sometimes even lack of flowering. But this in sorghum would allow us another method for production of breeding crosses and many other uses. The picture is of a non-treated maize plant on the left, and then on the right is a picture of a maize plant that's treated with maleic hydrazide back in the 1950s. So, chemical male gametocides in sorghum would allow us to make breeding crosses, and it would also allow the testing of female lines prior to sterilization. Because currently we have to sterilize our female lines prior to performance testing, which takes 3 to 4 years per line, and then we usually end up throwing out about 95% of what we sterilize. So this could greatly improve the efficiency within the breeding program, at least for female lines. And it would be critical for the deployment of a double haploid breeding system in sorghum, which there's been great interest as of recent to implement based on the gains that they have allowed in maize programs. An example of a maternal double haploid breeding system like they use in maize is where they take a sterile seed parent, cross it to the pollen parent, produce an F1 hybrid, and then they cross the haploid inducer line to the F1, and then you screen for haploids. Once you found those, you double their chromosomes. Currently, it's typically by injection of colchicine in the seedling stage, and then you get a double haploid line. And in sorghum, we would be able to do this similar thing if we have a method of creating a temporally male sterile panicle and large quantities of seed. But one thing I do want to point out is in the maize line, you can see the seed parents don't have a tassel. That's because maize have incomplete flowers, where they have the male reproductive organs on a tassel at the top of the plant, where the female reproductive organs are on a ear further down the shoot. So in order to create a sterile plant, it's quite easy just to pull the tassel or cut the tassel off, and then you have complete male sterility. But in sorghum, we have complete flowers, so we have our male and female reproductive organs within the same flower. So we can't just cut a panicle off and get a sterile plant. So we need a method that will produce complete male sterility and also large quantities of seed, and then not have to deal with either sterility genes or a sterile cytoplasm to allow for easy maintenance of our double haploid line. So the chemical I'm looking at is trifluoromethane sulfonamide, known as TFMSA. And back in 2004, it was tested in maize, and they found that it produced completely male sterile panicles with no phytotoxic effects or reduction of the female gamete. And also they noticed that the proline accumulation decreased in the anthers while it increased in the glumes, which they hypothesized that the chemical was blocking transport from the glume into the anthers. And TFMSA is no more dangerous than your typical herbicide being applied to an agronomic situation. On the safety data sheet, just has a signal word of warning, and it just advises not to ingest it, inhale it, or avoid prolonged contact with your skin. So, Dr. Hodnett found that literature, and in 2016 he tried it in the greenhouse and found that it also produces complete male sterility in sorghum with no phytotoxic effects, no reduction of female fertility. And He also found that it requires 1,000 times higher concentrations in maize, and the ideal timing of application appeared to be 2 to 7 days prior to emergence of the flag leaf at a 2 milligram dosage, which we have utilized some higher dosages, and we have found that window has increased a little bit. We still can't consistently apply sooner to the flag leaf than 2 days. However, we can apply farther out. Now we can apply approximately 20 to 30 days ahead of flag leaf emergence with certain dosages. And he also noticed that it is effective in multiple genotypes. So the objective of my project was to evaluate its use in the field. So I used 2 field environments at the AgriLife Research Farm and College Station. And then another part of my objective was to determine if TFMSA also has an effect in sorghum of the proline and amino acid levels within the anthers and blooms. So for objective 1, I applied by hand to the leaf prior to flag leaf emergence 4 dosages in a series of different application numbers. So for instance, I applied to a subset of individuals 10 milligrams in a single application, and then in a different subset, I applied a second application 4 days later. And then in another subset, I would have applied 3 applications, so 4 days beyond the second application, I would apply a third application to a subset to total 10, 20, and 30 milligram dosage. And then I also had 2 subsets of the 15 milligrams to have a single application of 15 milligrams and 2 applications second application about 4 days later to total 30 milligrams. And then then I had a single application of 20 and 30 milligrams. So for these, I would have started essentially, that would have been day 0, and this would have been day about 4 and about day 8. So I would have applied a single application, the final treatment of both the 3 and 2 treatment individuals on the same day. And I utilized 3 genotypes. They were all tan pigmented, and one of which had a waxy endosperm, which I made test crosses to 2 individuals. I treated 15, each subset contained 15 individuals, and I made test crosses on the 2 individuals with a purple pigmented non-waxy endosperm pollinator, which would act as a dominant phenotypic marker for test cross and seed testing. And then the effects were analyzed using single effect ANOVA. And then the picture in the bottom right is the method of application. I was taking for objective 2 the amino acid study in the greenhouse. However, we used the same method in the field. So the phenotype of test crosses, as an example, the left picture is an example of the purple versus tan pigmentation in the root and lower shoot system. And then the example and those were used for the 2 genotypes that had non-waxy endosperm, where I used a potassium iodide stain for the waxy endosperm genotype, because the second row, the red wells there are a waxy check, where the bluish black wells are non-waxy endosperm. So that would allow us to calculate the percent self-pollination within each test cross. But here I have presented the mean percent self-pollination for dosage. Means within each column with a differing letter indicate statistical significance at 95% confidence level. And as you can see, basically the application of TFMSA is significant, but once we get beyond a certain threshold, it's just as effective. Dose is not really that important, because it's effective at achieving satisfactory rates of sterility. And then for a number of applications, they have a similar trend where once we apply the chemical itself, we're getting satisfactory levels. You couldn't use a 3.8 percent self-pollination for commercial seed production, but for testing a female line or making a breeding cross, that would work just fine. You would want for grain sorghum commercial production, you would want 1% or less, and forage you would want 3% or less, so it is close for forage use. And then here, I will present the genotypic effect, and as you can see that there was none. There is a little bit of wobble in the means, but we believe that is an effect of the timing of application in relation to the maturity of that particular genotype, the BCXR1. And then the bottom table is of a little bit different project. A student working in Dr. Lee's lab, Kyle Levinka, wanted to try using a backpack sprayer to apply this. Because before these are individual plants, what I was doing, but we wanted to look at, see if it could be applicable in a little more large-scale application. And so he measured out 3 feet subsections within an 18-foot plot. And he had 2 subsections per 18 feet plot with about 5 feet in between each subsection. And he applied a low dose and a high dose. The low was approximately 5 milligrams. It's the backpack sprayer card to achieve a constant concentration without agitators or mixers or anything like that, which we did not have. We just used a basic backpack sprayer. And then the high was approximately 30 milligrams per plant. We calculated the estimated number of plants per subplot prior to planting, based on an estimated number of plants we figure we have in each plot, typically based on the weight of seed we plant. And then, as you can see, again, upon application of TSMSA, the percent sterility or percent self-pollination is decreased, but once you get beyond that threshold, there is no difference. We're seeing satisfactory levels of male sterility. And his is actually better than mine, actually, his frequency for percentages. So for objective 2, I wanted to look at the amino acid profile and see if we had a similar effect as what was occurring in maize. So to do so, I used dosages consisting of 0 milligrams, 2 milligrams, 6 and 20 milligrams. Applied it by hand to the leaves again, as the picture earlier showed. And then I recorded the date of flag leaf emergence, and then harvested the anthers and blooms based on that flag leaf emergence. So if a flag leaf emerged on the 15th of the month, and another flag leaf emerged on the 20th of the same month, I would have harvested the anthers from the top portion of the panicle of the plant where the flag leaf emerged on the 15th, compared to the plant where the flag leaf emerged on the 20th. I would harvest the lower portion to try to harvest the anthers at a similar physiological stage to the pollen, and if there's pollen, the tissue and everything is a similar stage. And then after the exercise, I kept the samples separate, sent them to the Texas A&M Protein Chemistry Lab for high-pressure liquid chromatography, HPLC quantification, and then calculated fold changes on an individual plant basis using dosages, the blocking term, and analyze the effects with single-factor ANOVA. And the means are not of a normal distribution, so I conducted a log base 2 transformation followed by a Fisher's LFD mean comparison test based on these log base 2 transformations. So here's the full change. The means presented are the untransformed data, however, the letters indicating significance are of the transformed data. And letters differing within each row indicates statistical significance at 95% confidence level. you can see proline and asparagine were highly disrupted. All the amino acids presented here were ones that had achieved a twofold or greater, either positively or negatively, fold change, where we evaluated 19 and the rest of the amino acids did not change by more than twofold. Based on some literature of amino acid profiles of cytoplasmic male sterile and genetic male sterile systems within other crops, we believe the proline, decrease in proline to be the mechanism of which the male sterility induction is occurring. And this profile is actually quite similar to many of the CMS and GMS profiles that have been presented. The top tables of the answers, the bottom is of the bloom, and as you can see, the bloom was much more stable. There's much less disruption occurring there. So it does appear to be targeting the answers more specifically than the blooms and vegetative tissue of the plant. So to summarize, application of CFMSA appears effective as a gametocide in field conditions, and male fertility reversion does occur. We believe it depends on the timing of application in relation to the maturity of the plant being treated, and the amino acid profile is disrupted in active tissue and remains relatively unchanged in blooming tissue. For that, I'd like to thank my committee, Drs. Rooney, Burston, and Stelly, and some specific people who helped me in the project, and everybody in the sorghum breeding lab, and the Texas A&M protein chemistry lab for quantifying the amino acids. Thanks, and we'll take questions.
What would it take for you to integrate something like this into your breeding program? And since, I guess, we're open to the answer, what kind of steps do you be taking for this to be, commercialized from away?
To commercialize it, we would need to, I think, evaluate it more with a sprayer. We need to evaluate the timing of application, maybe a couple more doses, but we really need to evaluate timing and application within that. And to usefulness, I think it's ready for use for testing of A-lines. So, by the sterilizer.
You talked about the sterility, but you didn't talk about the possible toxicity.
We haven't noticed any.
Did you measure it? Did you look at the...
the plants look normal. So.
Okay. Like oral concentrations?
Yeah. Even some much higher.
So you had early and late planting. Could you explain what was that your two environments? Doing early planting in time section and a later planting?
Yeah, they were separated by 2 weeks. So they're not too much different, but there actually was quite a bit different. They're two different fields. So.
And did you see much?
There was no statistical difference. However, there were some numeric differences between the early plant and late plant. The late plant actually appears to have a little bit lower percent self-pollination. So, that's about first.
I didn't hear precisely what you said at the very beginning, what they grew in Africa. You said some particular type, they didn't grow hybrids, they grew something else. What did you tell me they grew in
pure line cultivars, usually, typically.
Do you really believe that?
I guess.
You don't think they're open pollinated at all?
Yeah, they're probably open pollinated.
Okay.
The needle from like 1 year,
Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah.
Was there any like effect of the environment like rainfall or temperature on the?
The early planting, we did have, a fairly large rain event probably a week or so after treatment, or after the final treatment, as compared to the late where it was a little bit drier and probably a little bit warmer. So I don't know if that had anything to do with those numeric differences we saw or not.
When you grow the seed up that you produce, you don't see any kind of an effect
No.
whatsoever. It looks perfectly normal. It's fertile.
Yep. That's right.
So what's gonna be the cost if we're gonna apply this? You probably know on a plant basis, but what's gonna be a per acre basis if you're talking about seed production?
I figured it out this morning. For the 30 milligram, or approximately 30 milligram dosage of the sprayer, we would use about 0.5 grams per feet of row, or per foot of row. So that would be, I can't remember what the cost was per gram for quantities we bought, but
About $5.
okay. And I think it probably decreases if you bought larger quantities. It should decrease a little bit of that cost.
So it's not any cost to it is actually seed production in this way.
Probably currently, at least with the quantities we're buying, if you could buy larger quantities, we haven't priced out anything more than about 100 grams. But I know you can buy it by the kilo and pretty much anything up to a rail car. So,
That's just what, 15,000 linear feet in an acre, something like that?
something like that.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
15,000 times 5, so talking about $75,000 an acre.
Yeah, that's the quantity we're buying.
But what would you use it, Graham, if you were running a program, literally, I mean, because that addresses, what would you use this for? Would you use it for commercial, or are you gonna use it because you want to try crosses
That's
that?
your A-line.
I think for testing the airlines, just because sterilization is a fairly rigorous, lengthy process, and that could either reduce our sterilization nursery so we can focus on other things, or it would allow us to test more lines potentially and release more and increase productivity of the program. But also, I mean, I would use it for making breeding crosses if I knew early enough what lines we wanted to cross. I know sometimes we're unable to take notes or something at some of our observation nurseries in Mexico in the spring early enough to know before flag weeks it would emerge up here where we make our breeding crosses. But if there's a certain line you have special cross that you know you're going to make a year in advance or something, I would definitely use it for those.
Did you use it at all for any production of any double passports?
No, not yet.
So, proline, is this, I mean, does the literature state, is this free proline that's working as acting as an osmoregulator, or is it in a protein?
We don't really know. The amino acids I presented were free amino acids. We don't really know exactly how it's acting within an anther. We do know that there's been many reports of high levels of proline in fertile anthers and then low levels in sterile anthers, both through GMS and TMS. Many people have speculated protecting against spontaneous desiccation. Some have hypothesized it's an energy source because the metabolism of proline produces 30 ATP, which is only 2 less, I believe, than glucose. So it's a high energy amino acid. I mean, it could be associated in protein. I'm not really sure. That's bumper.
So is this labeled for use?
No, not in the
Or
crop.
it's only experimental at this stage?
Experimental.
Because somebody asked what it took to be able to go to the field.
Yeah,
And I would say that a label is what it takes to be able to go to the field.
yeah.
What is it labeled for?
And that might be more than one more experience, right?
What is it labeled for?
They typically use it as a stabilizer reaction for some specific organic chemistry reaction I can't remember. But they use it also in the process of making some glaucoma eye drops in the EU, they use it in the process of producing herbicides. I don't believe they derive, I'm not sure, but I don't believe they derive anything directly from this, but they use it as stabilizers in reactions of pharmaceutical and some industrial reactions.
So is there any thought of, having controls and then applying the application and then doing comparisons to RNA seed to see what, if there's like some genes getting messed up with the chemical, so we can maybe just go in and like kill the gene real quick and see if that's all, so if we can figure that out, we can bypass the whole need to spray or, what's the cost and all those things. Is there any thought of doing that kind of work yet?
I've thought of that. I've never brought it up to anybody, but I have thought of it. I don't have time to do that, but it'd be interesting to look at.
Yeah, like look at these control answers and then after you spray samples throughout the development to see how the gene expression changes.
Yeah.
Sorry, prelim question. You just told us what they use this chemical for. Did you read the original article? Why would they even test this on a maize plant? Do they have any indicate why? I mean, based on what you just told me that other people use it.
Not really sure. I can't remember really.
Right?
He synthesized it among many other trihalogenated sulfonamide.
He went through at least in this particular case, he went through 5 or 6 different sulfonides.
And this is most effective, and this is the only, I believe this is the only one that's not producing cytotoxic effects and complete melt sterility. I think he was a chemist at Pioneer.
I want to go back to Dr. Vienna, this question. So you said that subjectively the plant cells look messed up, but objectively, how would we measure fitness?
Well, potentially, probably transpiration would be something worth looking at, maybe photosynthetic rate.
Your method?
Well,
that's what I'm getting at. Did you measure the seed weight on the sample?
I didn't measure seed weight.
That might give me an indication if there was any accuracy. If you do any more of these.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Any more questions? Let's get another.